We're still in Chapter 6, Attitude Influence of the Manipulated Mind by Denise Wynn, and this is video number 10, The Weapons Effect. In The Writing on the Wall, McCarthy says in defense of her belief that it is possible to behave well, whatever the circumstances. Nobody by possession of a weapon can force a man to kill anybody. That is his own decision. If somebody points a gun at you and says, "Kill your friend or I will kill you," he is tempting you to kill your friend. That is all. Or maybe it is not all. Some American psychologists have found that the weapons effect works in far more insidious ways to influence behavior. Merely the sight of a gun can alter reactions, and not just on the part of the person wielding the weapon. Recently, Turner, Simmons, and Associates carried out a couple of intriguing experiments to prove the point. On 2 occasions, they invited students at a college carnival to throw sponges at a clown. The first time, a rifle was left in a conspicuous position in front of the booth where the clown was standing. On the second occasion, there was no rifle on view. Both times the clown hurled insults at some of the sponge throwers to see if his hostile behavior made them more aggressive in their throwing. It was found that insults had no effect on the students' behavior. What did have a marked effect was the innocent or not so innocent presence of the rifle. Students who saw the rifle reacted far more aggressively than the rest, throwing considerably more sponges at the clown. In a second experiment, the researchers arranged for a truck to stall at a busy junction. On some occasions, the truck displayed a rifle in a gun rack, clearly visible to cars behind. At other times, there was no gun. The researchers found that cars behind honked more and more persistently at the stalled truck if it had a rifle in the rack. Leonard Berkowitz, who carried out the first experiments on the weapons effect more than 10 years ago and whose findings aroused no little controversy, believes that the latest research confirms his early conclusion that the finger pulls the trigger, but the trigger may also be pulling the finger. Berkowitz considers that weapons act as a conditioned stimulus, eliciting a conditioned response. Turner offers another but similar explanation, which leans more on information processing concepts. He holds that guns remind people of occasions when they have seen aggression rewarded, for example on television where the villain or the hero may use a gun to get his way. It becomes easy, therefore, to connect guns with the rewards of aggression and, on catching sight of a gun in whatever context, to act more aggressively than normal habits would allow. Needless to say, all the researchers support the case for less violence on television. That was from Psychology Today, June 1981. Role-playing. It has already been suggested by various researchers in the context of conditioning and hypnosis that participating in the action helps elicit the desired response. Psychologists have shown through controlled experiments that participating in various events, even supposedly as a game, can definitely make an individual's attitude towards that event more positive than before. In studies, for instance, where students have been asked to improvise arguments for a position that they do not themselves hold, their attitudes towards that position have been shown to be strengthened. Acting out was more effective for inducing attitude change than reading aloud from a script, not only in themselves, but in those hearing them. However, the strongest changes came about in the attitudes of those who did the actual role-playing. Trying to identify with another person's point of view is not as effective as acting it out. In an experiment with college students where each had to take a turn in acting a role, then trying to identify with someone else playing a role, and lastly just watching someone performing a role, as an objective observer. All the students had taken on more of the views of the person they had role-played than those of the person they had tried to identify with or had just listened to. One experimenter, Hovland, commented on the power of improvisation as an attitude changer by saying that it required a person to think up all the arguments and appeals that he thinks would be most convincing to a person like himself, and in doing so it is himself he persuades. Also, the very act of improvising a role precludes rational weighing up of alternatives. All energy goes into portraying the appeal of the message. Role-playing is much used in therapy to encourage patients to empathize with the position of important others. For instance, a man who had a grudge against his mother all his life might come to appreciate her feelings more if he were obliged to act her part in a particular scenario while someone else plays his own. This is a feature of psychodrama. It has also been suggested that trade union and management representatives at loggerheads, because perceptual set, see Chapter 3, prevents them from seeing another point of view, might do well to switch roles in order to open up their perspective. In encounter groups, a common ploy is to get a person to act out repressed anger by beating a pillow and pretending that the pillow is his wife, mother, father, etc. What starts out as forced artificial attempts at anger soon tend to be overtaken by the real thing, with the person often overcome by the intensity of his angry emotions which emerge. Full flow role-playing emotion can thus precipitate real emotion. Writing an essay on a given subject can have similar effects to role-playing. An individual is required to think up arguments to sustain a position he may not hold, and the creative act is sufficient to make those ideas start to gel in his own head. Okay, I have to stop it right there, and we will pick up with video number 11 of Chapter 6 in The Manipulated Mind in just a moment. So bear with us.